The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale fear, a suffocating mix that made every heartbeat echo like a drum of doom. Mia's hands shook violently as she gripped the edge of the witness stand, her knuckles white, her eyes wide with terror. The murmurs of the crowded room barely reached her ears over the pounding of her own pulse. She could feel the weight of every stare, every judgment, every whispered doubt pressing down on her small frame. Across the room, the man who had stolen her peace for so long sat smirking, his eyes cold, almost triumphant. The prosecutor's words seemed to crumble before the icy wall of indifference in the judge's gaze. "Are you sure this girl can testify? Is she even credible?" The judge's voice cut through like a knife. The question hung in the air, dripping with disbelief, as if her very reality was a fabrication. Mia's chest tightened. The room seemed to tilt, shadows stretching and twisting in cruel mockery. Her voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. I have to tell the truth," she swallowed, but the words stuck, trapped behind a dam of fear and humiliation. She could feel the villain's presence like a dark cloud, suffocating her courage. Then, through the oppressive tension, a distant sound ripped through the courthouse doors, the low, rolling growl of engines, each one a heartbeat of rebellion, of strength, of someone who would not let injustice stand. Heads turned instinctively. Whispers filled the room. "Is that? No, it can't be." The sound grew louder, more commanding, reverberating against the walls, vibrating through every chair, every pane of glass, every heavy wooden beam. Mia's eyes widened as a figure appeared in the doorway, leather jacket gleaming, boots planted firmly, and eyes that radiated unyielding resolve. Behind him, another. The impossible had arrived, warriors on wheels, two titans of justice ready to shield the frightened and confront the darkness. Her breath caught, hope clashing with terror. For the first time, she didn't feel alone. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a fragile ember sparked. Maybe, just maybe, this nightmare could end today. Mia had always been the quiet one, the girl who faded into the background, who smiled politely but never loudly. She lived in a small town where appearances mattered more than truth, and where power often protected the cruel rather than the innocent. From the outside, her life seemed ordinary: school, friends, family, but behind closed doors, shadows lurked that no one else could see. It had started subtly, with small threats disguised as jokes, a hand lingering too long, words that cut deeper than any blade. Mia tried to push it away, telling herself it was just a misunderstanding, that maybe she was imagining things. But the incidents grew bolder, more terrifying. The man who haunted her, her teacher, someone entrusted with guidance and authority, smiled when no one was looking, and that smile hid a monster. He controlled everything: her classmates' perceptions, the whispers in the hallways, even the subtle nods of teachers who should have protected her. She tried to confide in her parents, but their fear was palpable, paralyzing. "Don't make waves," they whispered, eyes darting nervously. The world outside had rules she could not bend, and Mia was trapped inside a prison made of silence and fear. Every day was a careful calculation, a balancing act to survive without drawing attention, to live without inviting further harm. School became a battleground. Rumors spread faster than truth, and Mia, despite her innocence, was branded fragile, unreliable, even strange. She carried the weight of each sneer, each knowing glance, each whispered accusation as if they were bricks in a growing wall around her chest. Nights were worse, sleepless, haunted by memories she wished she could erase, replaying every incident, wondering what she could have done differently. The day she finally decided to speak up, she had rehearsed every word in front of the mirror. She had written notes, memorized statements, tried to armor herself with courage. But courage is fragile when facing someone who wields fear like a weapon, someone whose influence stretched like shadowy fingers into every corner of your life. Then came the court summons, a place that promised justice but threatened humiliation. Every step toward the courthouse was a battle against the instinct to turn and run. The media, the whispers, the judgmental stares of strangers, the predator smiling confidently across the room, it was all too much for someone who had spent years shrinking in the background. Mia felt the injustice weighing heavier than ever. How could a system designed to protect her seem to doubt her? How could someone so dangerous be allowed to sit across from her, untouched, untouchable, while she faced the burden of proof and the scrutiny of a society that had already labeled her story as questionable? Yet, despite the hopelessness, a tiny thread of resolve clung to her heart. She had endured too much to back down now. Somewhere, buried under fear and exhaustion, lay a flicker of defiance. It was fragile, uncertain, but it was there, a spark waiting for a wind strong enough to ignite it. And little did Mia know, that wind was already roaring toward the courthouse, engines growling like thunder, carrying two protectors whose arrival would shift the balance of power and bring the first glimmers of hope into her storm of despair. The courtroom clock ticked like a countdown to doom. Each second dragged, stretching Mia's fear taut, until it felt like her very soul would snap. The man across from her grew bolder, his smirk widening with every question, every pause, every flicker of doubt he sensed from the judge. He leaned back, fingers steepled, radiating confidence as if he owned the law itself. "You're sure you want to press charges?" he sneered during a recess, his voice low but venomous, carrying straight to Mia's ears. "Think carefully. People like me, we don't forgive mistakes." Mia's stomach churned. She had hoped the law would protect her, but now it felt like a trap, a stage set for her humiliation. Every witness that was supposed to support her wavered, hesitant under the invisible weight of his influence. Even her own words seemed fragile, brittle, incapable of piercing the armor he had built around himself. Outside, rumors began to twist in the wind. Social media posts, whispers in the hallways, even sympathetic classmates were coerced into doubt. The villain's network of intimidation extended like a shadow, reaching into corners Mia hadn't imagined. Calls at night, subtle threats disguised as concern, he was everywhere and nowhere, always present, always watching. The more Mia tried to stand tall, the stronger his presence felt. Every glance from him was a blade, every subtle nod from authority a reminder of how fragile her position was. It wasn't just fear, it was suffocating, a tidal wave threatening to drag her under. Her parents, though supportive in spirit, were frozen in helplessness. They had no weapons against a predator who thrived on manipulation, whose influence could topple careers and silence voices. Every attempt Mia made to find allies seemed to falter. Her courage wavered, her resolve shaking under the mounting pressure. And yet, amidst the darkness, the distant growl of engines pierced her anxiety. At first, it was almost imperceptible, a vibration beneath the courtroom floor. But it grew, a warning, a promise, a storm approaching. Somewhere beyond the courthouse doors, a force was gathering, a force that did not know fear, did not bow to intimidation, did not let injustice remain unchallenged. For the first time since the nightmare began, Mia felt a pulse of hope. The villain might be strong, but he was about to meet an unstoppable storm, one that would not allow him to prey on the helpless any longer. The rumble started softly, almost like distant thunder, but it quickly grew into a roar that shook the courthouse doors and rattled the polished floors. Every head turned instinctively as the sound escalated, a rolling tide of power and purpose. Leather, chrome, and engines, 2, then 4, then a dozen, filled the horizon outside, their shadows stretching long across the sunlit street. Through the glass doors, the first biker appeared, boots heavy against the steps, jacket catching the light like armor. His gaze swept the room, piercing, unwavering, scanning every corner until it landed on Mia. Her heart skipped. He was real. Not a fantasy, not a dream, real, alive, and here for her. Behind him, another biker emerged, silent but equally commanding. The air itself seemed to charge, electricity buzzing, as if the walls recognized the arrival of justice incarnate. The courtroom fell into a stunned silence. Even the villain, so confident moments ago, froze mid-smirk. The sudden presence of these outsiders, these warriors, disrupted the balance he had carefully cultivated. His smirk faltered, unease flickering in his eyes. He realized, perhaps too late, that intimidation had met its match. The two bikers didn't rush. They didn't yell or demand attention. They walked slowly, purposefully, letting their presence speak for them. Every step was a statement, courage over fear, justice over cruelty. The engines behind them idled, a low growl that reminded everyone in the room that power now had a face, a name, and a mission. Mia's chest rose and fell rapidly. Relief mingled with awe. She had spent months feeling small, invisible, powerless. But these men, these strangers bound by loyalty, honor, and a refusal to let injustice stand, had arrived to shield her from the darkness. In their eyes, she saw understanding. In their stance, protection. In their quiet confidence, the promise that she was no longer alone. One of the bikers stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "She doesn't have to face this alone," he said. It wasn't a question, it was a declaration. The other nodded, silent but equally resolute. They didn't need the law to recognize them, their presence alone demanded respect, a reminder that morality wasn't confined to courtrooms. The villain's network, his carefully constructed web of influence, seemed to shrink in the shadow of the bikers. Whispers turned into gasps. The judge's hand trembled slightly on the gavel. Witnesses straightened. Authority shifted subtly in the room, not because of legal procedure, but because courage had walked through the door, wearing leather and chrome. Mia exhaled a shaky breath, letting herself lean slightly against the stand. For the first time, she felt an ember of hope flare into a small, steady fire. The storm she had endured for so long, the fear, the manipulation, the hopelessness, was about to be confronted head-on. And these bikers, bonded by unspoken honor and relentless justice, were the hurricane she had been waiting for. Outside, the engines revved once more, a symphony of defiance. Inside, the courtroom held its collective breath. The tide was turning. The courtroom air was electric, charged with tension and anticipation. The villain's eyes darted between Mia and the two bikers now standing firmly behind her, their presence radiating unshakable authority. For the first time, he felt the tremor of uncertainty creep into his carefully controlled demeanor. Every word he had used to intimidate, every manipulation he had deployed, seemed suddenly fragile. The prosecutor tried to regain control, clearing his throat nervously. "Miss Mia, can you continue your testimony?" Mia's voice wavered at first, but she drew in a shaky breath, the weight of the biker's silent encouragement steadying her. "Yes," she said. And for the first time, it wasn't just fear guiding her words, it was defiance, strength drawn from the knowledge that she no longer faced this alone. As Mia recounted the horrors she had endured, the villain shifted in his seat, beads of sweat forming along his temple. The room leaned in, every ear straining to catch the story that had been suppressed for so long. The biker's eyes never left him. One step closer, one slow inhale, and the silent message was clear: the predator's games were over. Then came the pivotal moment. A witness, once hesitant, now spoke with newfound courage. The chains of fear that had bound the courtroom's observers began to break. One by one, testimonies aligned with Mia's story, painting a picture of manipulation, cruelty, and abuse. The villain's mask of control began to crumble. He fumbled over his words, trying to dismiss the mounting evidence, but the strength in Mia's voice, the unwavering presence of the bikers, and the undeniable truth converging in the courtroom left him exposed. The judge's gavel pounded like thunder. "This behavior is intolerable. The villain's influence had no place here. You will answer for your actions." The words rang out, final and unyielding, echoing like the engines that had heralded the bikers' arrival. The bikers didn't need to speak. Their eyes, locked on the villain, conveyed a silent vow: justice would be delivered, one way or another. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as the man, once untouchable, was forced to confront the weight of his deeds. His arrogance had met a storm that could not be swayed by money, fear, or manipulation. Outside, the roar of the engines had grown to a triumphant crescendo. Passers-by paused, watching as two forces collided, the arrogance of evil and the unyielding courage of those who refused to stand idle. Inside, the courtroom felt the same energy, as if the power of justice itself had been summoned. Mia's tears fell freely, not from fear this time, but from relief. The years of terror, of silence, of doubt, were lifting. She looked at the bikers, gratitude and awe shimmering in her eyes. They nodded once, acknowledging her strength while reminding her that she was never alone. And then, the final blow, the villain's world shattered. Evidence that had been hidden, manipulated, or dismissed surfaced with precision, leaving him exposed before the law and public eye. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, a mixture of shock, validation, and satisfaction. He was not untouchable. He never would be again. As the gavel fell one last time, Mia exhaled, a trembling smile breaking across her face. Justice had arrived not only in the form of law but through courage, solidarity, and the silent promise of two riders who refused to let the innocent be crushed. The courtroom had quieted, leaving behind the hum of relief and the soft shuffle of feet. Mia stood, finally free from the weight that had pressed on her chest for so long. The fear that had gripped her heart was replaced by a fragile but growing joy. She could breathe again, laugh again, even hope again. The two bikers remained by her side, silent sentinels of protection. They didn't linger for praise or attention, for their reward had always been the knowledge that the innocent were shielded. One gave a small, almost imperceptible nod to Mia, a gesture that said, "You're safe now. You were never alone." Outside, sunlight poured over the courthouse steps, illuminating the gleaming chrome of the motorcycles parked like guardians at the threshold. Engines idled, a steady heartbeat of resilience and defiance against the cruelty that had plagued Mia's life. People stopped to glance, awe and respect in their eyes, but the bikers offered nothing more than a brief wave before mounting their machines. Mia watched them ride away, the roar of engines fading into the distance, leaving her in a world that now felt a little brighter, a little safer. Though the riders were gone, their impact remained, a reminder that courage can appear in the most unexpected forms, that justice sometimes arrives on wheels, and that even the smallest voice can be amplified when someone refuses to let it be silenced. Her parents approached, wrapping her in a tight embrace. Tears flowed freely, this time untainted by fear or doubt, only pure relief and pride. For the first time in years, Mia felt whole. She turned one last time toward the courthouse steps, imagining the two figures disappearing into the horizon. The wind carried their promise, that the world could be cruel, yes, but that courage and solidarity would always have a place, always have a voice. And in that moment, Mia smiled, not just at the victory, but at the knowledge that she had survived, that she had endured, and that she could finally move forward. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe for more powerful stories.